And a commitment gives a purpose to your life and a meaning to your life.
Welcome to Matters Concerning Families because
Families matter.
I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Patrick.
We are so glad that you're joining us in the podcast. We would like, before we get much further, extend our appreciation to our audience.
Yes.
And we would appreciate also if you would like, share, and subscribe to help us improve our content and our audience.
We want to build our audience. We feel we have some powerful things to say that will affect the whole world.
So the last time we were talking about marriage in general, and would you like to say a few things about it before we go on to our topic for today?
And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." We mentioned God made man and fashioned woman. And man appreciated that fashion. I think Adam was a little bit startled when he seen that woman. Oh, that's really good, God. That's wonderful.
And there's a real oneness there, a real unity, because she did come from his
Bones of bones.
There's a
Flesh of
definite
flesh.
connection there. It's
And
not just separate.
And you leave father and mother and cleave to your wife. And we spoke about that cleaving as a gluing together. Like if you would have an envelope and you would close that up, when you opened it, it would tear in different parts. And that's what happens when marriages aren't in the will of God and we try to break marriages.
Yes, and we also just want to say one other thing, that God is the one that defines marriage. It's not people, it's God. And there is a Bible scripture, a Bible verse that actually says, "For this cause," and it goes on to say more about marriage. But God had a cause. There's a cause to marriage.
There is a purpose. So God would have a woman and a husband bear image to him. So God said, "Let us make man in our image," and he created them male and female. This shows the diversity of God. And the Godhead, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost are all equal, but Christ subjected himself to the Father. Not because he wasn't equal, because that was his role. And we want to say a wife's role is the same thing. And then when we have the God in the middle, we have a picture of the Trinity, unity and diversity.
Sounds good. It's fantastic. Marriage is a great thing. And one of the most important things about marriage, starting out right from the beginning, is commitment.
It's not trying, I'm going to try this out, and if it doesn't work, well, I'll leave. But it's a commitment that's why in the beginning the marriage vow says for good or for worse, poor or for richer or whatever, we're going to stick it out together.
And I was reading a statistic that said that 63% of divorces, the divorced people stated that if they would have understood a little bit more about commitment, that there probably wouldn't have been a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we live in a society today that you could see it on media, on social media, or just in the air, where people just go from relationship to relationship. There's no real understanding of commitment. And I want to ask you, how would you define commitment?
Well, I would say in general, people are looking for love in a romantic way with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go base my position with my wife on feelings, my feelings are going to come and go, and the honeymoon will be over, and I will not have the feelings. But love is more than feelings.
Well, let's say too, there are some great feelings in marriage. So we
That's
don't want to be
true.
like we just sit there and like there's no feelings. So definitely there's feelings, but commitment goes beyond feelings.
Well, when you lead with commitment and love, the commitment, sometimes you may move into commitment and without feelings, but feelings will come and they will be good feelings.
Yeah, so what happens a lot of times is you kind of go through this honeymoon phase, as they say, or this time of like no one could do wrong, or you're just so happy to be married. But then uh, you get back into real life, and you get back to going to a job or just setting up the household, making the adjustments, and some of that honeymoon feeling wears off as you realize, oh, I've got to do something here. I have to make some sacrifices. I have to make some adjustments.
And marriage is to help one another perfect one another in God. And so you're working with me and I'm working with you, and we're helping each other to unite and labor together in love. Just like if you had a child, God allows to be some difficulties in raising that child. There's a lot of work because that work produces love. When you go through things together, love increases.
That is so true. And I'm thinking about a definition of commitment is being dedicated to a cause. So let's just start on something very simple. I took piano lessons for 10 years, and I was very committed to becoming a good piano player. That meant that I had to set aside time, maybe as I got older, 4 hours a day of playing. I had to commit to what my teacher taught me to do in terms of memory work and going from one step to the next step and learning a piece and just following instruction. And anyhow, there were some real sacrifices. I couldn't be just playing with my friends all the time at that moment. And so that's just a real basic example of commitment. But would you say there's some freedoms that might be lost? Like when you get married, I think one of the biggest adjustments or one of the things that you're realizing is you can't do necessarily everything that you did before you
So
were
in marriage, I committed to you. That means every other woman was out.
Right.
And when I committed to you, I didn't have an escape route where, like, if things don't work out, I'd escape. But we're going to sit down and work through this. And so has every day been good? No, we've had some tough times. But I'd rather have tough times with her than by myself or with anyone else in this world.
You're going to have rough times no matter what, so you might as well have it with commitment.
And a commitment gives a purpose to your life and a meaning to your life. That I'm committed, and I'm going to, my burden with my wife and my children was always to help them to prosper and to do well, help them to go to heaven, to do the best for them. And that would cause me to sacrifice. Let me say this something about a husband. A husband needs to know how to work. He needs to know how to sacrifice. And he needs to not have his way all the time. He might be the king of the castle, but he's a working king. He's not just sitting on his throne doing nothing. He is committed. A real leader is committed to making those around him better than he is, are bringing them up to as highest level as they can possibly be.
Yeah, that is so true. And then the wife too, it's not just the husband that has commitment.
Right.
But there's things that the wife needs to do, and maybe as time goes on, we could discuss more about how, about a husband and a wife in the home. But there's definitely sacrifices. You just don't get on the Edify or whatever all day and just chat with your friends and go out and do this type of thing and that thing. But even there's just practical sacrifices that you need to make. And I want to say that if in a marriage, if there are children, the most important thing, or one of the most important things, to the question's been asked is, how do you raise children to be well adjusted. Well, one answer is if they see their mother and father committed to each other and
And a
to their
loving
marriage.
relationship, and even working through difficulties together, and they're not fearful that they're going to break up.
When I was growing up, I appreciate my mother and father very much. They're not living now, but they were a really good example. And I remember one day when I was about 8 years old, they got into a major disagreement, which we were not, like usually the disagreements were in private or whatever, but they got into a major disagreement.
Mhm.
And then my father came into our room because this was in the evening and I was uh, like, we're trying to go to sleep, but we heard this major disagreement. And my dad came in and said something like, are you okay? And I said, are you getting a divorce? Because I wasn't sure they had this major disagreement. And my father did not have to think twice. He's like, no, we're not getting a divorce. But I could see that they were able to work through their difficulty. They didn't split up or they didn't divide because of this disagreement. They worked through it. And that was real. I remember that incident to this day, because it really was encouraging to me in the sense that I knew my parents were going to stay together.
So marriage is a gift from God. Did I already say that?
You might have said something like it.
Yeah, I have. It's at the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis.
Mhm.
Jesus' first miracle was with marriage, and it's the end of Revelation. Marriage is important to God, and this is a gift from God. And in that gift, God has us to labor and work together. And we've had our difficult days, but love and commitment brings us through.
Yes, and as you can see, this picture here, and you probably can't, maybe you cannot see it clearly, but that is a picture on our wedding day after we were married, and I'm glad I still have that
Reminder.
and I have that look for my husband too.
So we have not lost our flame of love, but rather it's increased.
If you hold out the commitment, you get into a deeper love. It's not superficial. It's something real and deep. I can trust my husband with, he knows all the difficult points about me. He knows all the good things about me. And we've pulled through a commitment, and that actually really deepens even the romance
Yes.
and the love in later life. Because as one minister used to say, like, when you have these young couples, he used to say, like your husband someday he may be bald, and your wife's waist might be a little thicker than what it is now, and it goes beyond the physical thing. Even though there's a physical aspect to marriage that is very important, but it goes beyond that, and you're gonna have to be willing, no matter what happens. There's things that come along, like we said, that are difficult.
That's right. And research shows that your marriage might not be going that smooth, but if you stick with it, in due time, it will straighten out because God works within the confines of a marriage to work things out. Now, we're not saying if someone's abusive and all these other things, we're not talking about that commitment. But your commitment should be, by the grace of God, I'm going to work through this with my wife, and we will be an example of a marriage that works.
Sounds good. And if you know when you're getting married that there's probably going to be some struggles, if you just know that ahead of time, no one can
That
say what
helps.
they are exactly, and you have that in your mind, that will help you when you come to that season of struggle. You'll be like, oh yeah.
Right. And so my wife has always satisfied me. I can say this is the woman that I have known, and only this woman, because I am committed to her. And in that commitment, the Lord blesses.
We were thinking about just one more thing. Maybe you think about like the current day news is that Newsweek wrote an article about Taylor Swift, how she was not um, a good role model for young children. And they said it was because she was 34 and she was not married, and she didn't have any children. Well, I know personally there are women that are tremendous who are 34
Right, have no
and not
children.
married and don't have children. That really isn't the issue.
But her life, she has a lot of relationships with no commitments. And it's not healthy for her, and it's not healthy for the men. And really, a man who has all these relationships is in society they say, well, that's a real man. But really, that they've been feminized. That's not what a real man does.
Yes, so I think there's been a lot that said that commitment is super important. It's very important in marriage, and then it also extends to other areas in your life. Commitment, and so I'm so glad that we were able to. We could say a whole lot more probably, but
Yeah, we'll stop here. We thank you for listening. Now we love interaction. If in your comments, if you have questions or suggestions of topics, please let us know. And as much as possible, we'll work with those.
thank you for listening and joining in, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Good night.